The battle for the Ukrainian city of Bakhmut has been raging since the early days of the invasion, and it shows no signs of letting up. Described as one of the bloodiest and most grueling battles of the 21st century, it has taken a heavy toll on both sides. But what makes Bakhmut so strategically important that Russia is willing to expend so much manpower and resources to capture it? And how have Ukrainian defenders managed to hold out against overwhelming odds for so long? We'll take a closer look into the recent battles and the strategic values of the battle. Get ready for a sobering and insightful journey into one of the most brutal, consequential battles of the ongoing conflict. The Battle of Bakhmut is a military conflict that has taken place in and around the city of Bakhmut between Ukraine and Russia as a part of the larger battle for Donbas. The main attacking force is made up of Russian mercenaries from the Wagner Group, supported by regular Russian troops and elements of the separatist Donetsk People's Republic and Luhansk People's Republic. The battle for Bakhmut has been ongoing for more than a year, with both sides suffering high casualties and without any significant advances. Bakhmut, formerly known as Artemivsk, has been the site of conflict since the 2014 Battle of Artemivsk between Ukraine and the self-declared separatist Donetsk People's Republic. During the 2014 pro-Russian unrest in Ukraine, pro-Russian separatists captured parts of the city in April the following year, and Ukrainian Special Forces unit together with the National Guard and were sent to expel the separatists from the city. The separatists were eventually pushed out to the city's outskirts where clashes continued until July 2014. As the Battle of Bakhmut has been going for over a year, Russian forces are still continuing their offensive to capture the city. Ukrainian militaries are describing the attacks as constant. Taking Bakhmut would be Russia's first major victory in more than 6 months and would open the way to seizing the last remaining urban centers in the Donetsk region. Russian troops, including mercenaries from the Wagner Group, are attempting to cut off the Ukrainian defenders' supply lines and force them to surrender or withdraw. Despite significant losses, the Ukrainian military is holding firm, with one soldier declaring that everything will be Ukraine. General Alexander Syrsky, commander of Ukraine's ground forces, recently said, despite significant losses, the enemy threw in the most prepared assault units of Wagner, who are trying to break through the defenses of our troops and surround the city, regarding Russians' attempts to cut the Ukrainian defenders' supply lines. According to the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, the Russian attacks are focused on Bakhmut and other towns and villages in Donetsk province. However, Russian forces have also shelled more than 20 settlements in northern regions near the Russian border, including Chernihiv, Sumy, and Kharkiv. Ukrainian aircraft launched 3 strikes on areas of concentration of Russian forces. As previously said, the battles in Bakhmut continues as Russian forces attempts to encircle and cut off the vulnerable supply lines of Ukrainian defenders. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky praised the defenders, stating that the enemy is constantly destroying everything that can be used to protect their positions for fortification and defense. The Ukrainian General Staff reports that Russia has strengthened its forces in the Bakhmut area and is shelling the surrounding settlements. Russia has replenished its forces with hundreds of thousands of conscripts, and as a result, it has intensified its attacks along the front in the east. While Russia claims to have destroyed a Ukrainian ammunition depot near Bakhmut and shot down US-made rockets and Ukrainian drones, Western countries report that several of Russia's assaults on Bakhmut have failed at a high cost. Ukraine's military forces have mostly been focused on holding defensive positions in the recent weeks, but they are expected to attempt a counteroffensive later this year using new weapons pledged by the West. However, President Zelensky has pushed for F-16 fighter jets that his Western allies have been reluctant to provide. There are a few reasonings behind the Westerns reluctant to provide Ukraine with modernized air defense systems, with the first one being that the West fears that it could further escalate the conflict with Russia, and they could be seen as a provocative move and potentially lead to a larger military confrontation. And the second reason being that F-16 fighter jets may not be the best option for Ukraine's air defense needs, since F-16s are primarily designed for air-to-air combats and may not be as effective in ground attacks. Even though the West won't provide Ukraine with fighter jets, it is still committed to supporting Ukraine in its conflict with Russia. The West has already provided Ukraine with other forms of military aid, such as anti-tank missiles and military training, and is working to modernize Ukraine's air defense systems. Although Russia has been trying to cut off the supply lines into Bakhmut, Ukraine's defense has remained strong, and Russia is not likely to make significant territorial gains in the near future. In August 2022, the battle for Bakhmut began with massive ground attacks by Russian forces on settlements south and southeast of the city. The Wagner Group managed to break through Ukrainian defenses and reach Patrice-Lumumba Street on the eastern outskirts of Bakhmut. Russian forces continued to push towards Bakhmut from the south. Ukrainian sources stated on 14 August that Russian forces had achieved partial success near Bakhmut. The situation escalated in September, with night shelling in the city center burning down the Martynov Palace of Culture, where the humanitarian headquarters worked. On 22 September, a Russian missile strike destroyed the main bridge across the Bakhmut River, disrupting civilian travel and Ukrainian military logistics. By October, Russian forces had advanced into the villages of Zaitsev and Optane on the southern and southeastern outskirts of Bakhmut. Russian forces claimed to have captured Optane, located 3 kilometers south of Bakhmut, and Ivangrad, although these towns were still contested. As the battle continued into November and December, trench warfare conditions descended. Neither side was making any significant breakthroughs, and hundreds of casualties were reported daily amid fierce shelling and artillery duels. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky accused Russia of destroying Bakhmut, and the Ukrainian soldiers described the front as a meat grinder. From December 11th to 13th, Russian sources claimed that Wagner fighters had breached defenses in East Bakhmut, occupying the northern section of Fyodor Maximenko Street, and was advancing along Patrice-Lumumba Street, fully capturing factories close by. The Ukrainian General Staff confirmed clashes in Soledar and Pitherad, but claimed to have repelled all assaults. Later that month, Ukrainian forces counterattacked along Fyodor Maximenko Street and pushed Wagner forces back to the eastern outskirts of the suburban amid street clashes. In early January 2023, Russian forces launched an offensive in the region and managed to capture the nearby town of Soledar. By January 20th, both the Russian Defense Ministry and Wagner forces claimed to have captured Klishchiivka, a village located 9 kilometers southwest of Bakhmut. Russian forces have after this intensified their attacks on the city and its surrounding areas, and as of February 22nd, they have encircled Bakhmut from the east and north. The Russian assault forces primarily consist of Wagner Group mercenary contractors and ex-convicts, reinforcements from other lines in Ukraine, and newly mobilized recruits that the Ukrainians refer to as Mobiks. Some observers have also compared the Russian tactics to the Soviet-style human wave attacks, repeatedly assaulting Ukrainian positions with waves of infantry. While the Ukrainian defenders consist of a mixture of units, with some being constantly rotated to replenish casualties and prevent combat fatigue. It has also been estimated that Ukraine are defending Bakhmut with approximately 30,000 military personnel. The overall strategic value of Bakhmut has been considered dubious by many analysts, who observe that the resources and lives in Russia has spent assaulting the city far outweigh its importance. However, securing Bakhmut would put Kramatorsk and Sloviansk within sufficient Russian artillery range, and some experts argue that Russia's costly assault is a matter of both preserving prestige and sunk cost fallacy. The Battle of Bakhmut has been a brutal and devastating conflict, with both Ukrainian and Russian military suffering a significant loss. Despite the strategic value of the city being questioned by some analysts, the fighting there continues, and it remains to be seen how the situation will ultimately be resolved. As we reflect on the human toll of this conflict, it's worth considering the larger implications of this battle. What lessons can we learn from this brutal and bloody conflict, and how can we work to prevent similar conflicts in the future? Let us know what your opinions is in the comment section below, and do not forget to leave a subscribe so you don't miss out on any updates on the war between Ukraine and Russia.